Hello, welcome to this video on authorities in your collections index system. Authorities are one of the ways we control vocabularies in your system. The other way is terminologies, which are covered in a separate video. The main difference between terminologies and authorities is that terminologies are used when the term itself doesn't need that much more information associated with it, something like object name or material type. Whereas with authorities, you might have lots of additional information you want to associate with a person or an organisation or an event and store that on its relevant authority record. To find your authority records, you want to open up the side menu, this navigation menu in your system, and scroll down to the authorities area here. Here you can see all the different types of authorities installed on your system, and what you see here will vary depending on the modules you have installed. One common example, particularly on museum systems, is the person's authority. Once you've selected a type of authority record, you'll be presented with a very familiar screen, and here you can search and navigate your way through your authority records just like you can with your collections records. So you can run quick searches, quick word searches across your authorities, and you can also do an advanced search. This works in exactly the same way as advanced searching your collections, so you can pick from all the fields used in this authority type. So for persons, for example, you might do something like searching on a person's surname, setting your parameters, and then you could find everybody in this example who's recorded with the surname of Smith. Note that the way your search results are laid out, again, very similar to other record types. So we have important information about the authorities here. Note the idea of this usage column, which summarizes what sort of records these authorities are being used in, as well as options at the end to view this individual authority or to jump in and edit it. You will also note that you can use folders and add authorities to different folder groups if you need to, just like you can with your collections. And down at the bottom of the search results, we have options for exporting data, running reports, batch editing, all the options you'd expect to find at the bottom of one of these search summaries. So let's see what a single authority record looks like. If I click on View, and I'm now looking at a single authority record, in this case a person's authority, but all authority records will have a similar layout. So just like other types of record in the system, you'll see that you have important information listed down here on the left. So you'll have the field titles and then the information recorded against the fields. And again, you can see that because we're looking at the person's authority, there's quite a lot of special fields here that you can fill out to help describe someone, to list things like contact details, life information, all sorts of things that might be relevant about a person that you want to record in your system for ease of reference. The other useful thing about these authority records is they do have this usage tab over here on the right. So again, you get the summary of all the different collections records in your system that this person is being used on. So their name is being controlling one or more fields in those records, and a summary. And we can click on these to jump to all the objects, for example, that are using Bill Smith at the moment. And of course, if we had an image uploaded here for Bill Smith, some kind of reference image, that would also appear over here on the right. If we jump behind the scenes and click on Edit, you'll see that the way we change and edit and create authorities is also very similar to other types of records. So the fields themselves are quite specialist. They will depend on the authority you're editing, but of course the way you edit these fields is the same across any record. So particularly for the person authority, you can see we've got lots of fields to help us identify this person, things like their names, titles. Display name is an interesting one to point out. So you can kind of force a system to display a different name than the kind of official recorded names. So maybe Bill Smith had a nickname, and we can make sure that he appears with that nickname, for example, and overwrite these names in the displays if we want to. And again, looking down here, you can see other fields. Type is an interesting one for some authorities. So this works on things like persons, where you have this idea of type. And what this does is control which fields can access this authority record. So, for example, only people marked as yes for artist will be available on fields such as object, production, person. Things like subject will only appear in fields like content, person. The best practice is normally to leave all of these as yes, so that this person authority can be accessed from any person authority controlled field. The only exception here is user, which normally you'll leave blank, but this does give you an option to mark if the person authority you've created actually matches someone who is a registered user on your system. And this allows you to link this authority to their username and account, which is quite important for some additional modules in your system, for example, the workflow engine. And like all records, once you've made changes, you can simply save them, like so. And now we can see this display name popping up here, which we've added. Also note that you can build views for your authority records, just like your collections. At the moment, we only have one default view here, but if you want to change what order these fields appear in and hide certain fields, you can do that in exactly the same way as you would by building views for other types of records. And to go back to our search results, if we scroll down to the bottom, you can now see that Bill Smith is appearing under the preferred display name that we've entered. Let's now see a different example of another authority type. If you are using our archives module, then you might want to use the archival authority, which is based on the international standard archival authority record. And if you have both objects and archives in your system, then you'll need to choose if you want your archives to use the same spectrum-based authorities as your objects, or if you want them to use a different archival authority system as shown here. As we've seen for persons, the way you will search and edit these authorities is exactly the same. So if I view one of my archival authorities here, you can see there's not too much recorded about this authority yet, but the layout is exactly the same, with fields and information on the left and then usage over here on the right. And if we edit the archival authority, you can see again the field's very different. This is built on a different kind of information standard, but we can see how for the archival authority the type is actually set within the authority. So we don't have persons, organizations kind of siloed out into different authorities. It's all within the same authority list, and we can set the type within here, for example. Also note that we have various descriptive areas for these authorities and relationship areas. And again, everything's slightly more generic because it's got to handle different types of authority. Also note that whenever you're editing in the system, be it authority records or other types of records, we do offer the help. So whenever you float your cursor over the field's help, you'll get some text helping you to remember what this field is all about. In this case, this is information taken from the International Standard Archival Authority records. So you can check what the standard says about these different fields. So let's remind ourselves how authorities function within a collections record. Where do we connect other records to our authorities? Well, I'm currently editing an object record, and let's scroll down and find a field that uses authorities. So if I head down to the description section, I'm going to find content person, which is just here. I'm going to add an occurrence of this group, and under the person field here, you can see a select button, and this is telling me that I am going to be searching my authorities. And we're now prompted to make a search. Now, before I do so, note that this is telling us it's searching across persons of type subject. So if you cast your mind back to earlier in this tutorial, when we were looking at the type for those persons authorities, this is where they come into effect. And so when we search for our person authorities here, we're only going to find persons whose type subject is set as yes. So this is the effect those choices have on fields elsewhere in the system. And if I then do a search for Smith, We can see all the Smiths here in our system, and there's the Bill Smith we edited earlier, and that's now set as an authority in our record. To show you another good example of this, if I open up production, let's go down to object production person. You can see we've already got one production person associated here, but with this being a repeated group, we can add more. And now my second person, I'm going to press select. And again, this time we've got searching across persons of type artist. So we're only going to find authorities which have that type of artist set as yes. So another example of how that type comes into play and how it will affect where you can pick your person's authority. So again, let's try a different name here. Let's go for Jones, and you can see we can quickly get all the Jones authorities in our persons list here. And let's just pick one as an example here. A final example for this, let's look at the archives record. I've now moved over to edit an archive item. I'm editing a record here, and if I scroll down, we can see that most of the authorities in terms of archive records are controlled here in the access points section. Now, depending on how your archive system is set up, as I mentioned earlier, it may be sharing the same spectrum-based authorities as your object collections if you have that sort of setup. But if you only have an archive system or have them separated out from your objects, you might be using the ISAR authorities instead. And this is where either of those authority types will be linked up here. So again, just like we saw for objects, we're going to be clicking a button and we're able to search our authorities. Here's a search I did earlier for the word Smith, and in this case, it's a Smith authority in our archival authority records. So a different location from the person records we were just looking at. Another interesting thing to note on the access points here in the archive record is we can pick an authority. I can pick Smith, but equally we can add a free text item as well. So you can kind of add approved system authorities, but also free text entries here as a bit of a mixture as well. So that's worth noting about if you are interested in using the access points in the authority record. That's about it for today in terms of looking at authorities in CollectionsIndex Web Edition. I hope that's been helpful. As ever, if you have any questions about your system, about the use of authorities or anything else, do please get in touch with us. And if you have any requests or suggestions for useful tutorials that aren't on the channel, do let us know and we'll factor those in and hopefully publish them in the future. But for now, goodbye.